skies are darkening the world, you know. The hills no longer green. Like the animals, your blood will flow. Dreaming of this Christmas.
Smiling wide with empty eyes, I'll find you. You're a lot of fun, just like your friend. You're hiding, but I'm deep inside your mind. You'll die 1,000 times, do you wanna try again? You're tired of running, nowhere to hide it. I'm getting closer every second.
Behind you.
There's so many songs to play with, so little time. Not long till I find you. Run for your life. You're in my world now. You're joining your friends. I'm coming to take your soul. In the end, you can't run.
A horrifying reality where everything you know and love becomes shrouded in a veil of confusion. This story isn't horrifying because of the entity itself, it's the concept of its existence. I Am, formerly known as Hyperaccurate, comes from the story The One Who Always Was, made by Serious Flower. In the last video I did, you guys really liked it when I read through the whole thing. So this time, I'll be doing the same. And afterwards, I'll give my thoughts. Additionally, I'll be talking about the old lore of Hyperaccurate and the FNF mod he's a part of called Myths of Yamaha. So with that out of the way, allow me to tell the tale of the one who always was. Have you ever dreamed so deeply that waking up becomes a complicated task? Your head feels so heavy, and the mere act of wanting to lift it from the bed causes pain. I'm not sure if it's a bad dream, or if, on the contrary, I need more sleep. Yeah, maybe that's it. Better to sleep than let what remains of my dreams flourish. However, a loud noise pulled me from my peaceful, heavy rest. I opened my eyes in a great effort I didn't believe I was capable of. How much time has passed now? In reality, I wasn't in my bed, but in a rocking chair. I rest my gaze on that window, a bit dirty but brighter than my entire room, trying to guess what time of day or what time of night it might be, until I perceive a drop of water, and then another, and one more. Oh, of course, it's raining. That was what the drops meant. Maybe another one of those sounds that tear through the very sky was what pulled me from my lethargy. I really didn't want to see how the situation here was. I've become so unaccustomed to this place. I don't know if it's me or if it's my mind this time. In my most peaceful dreams, in which there literally was nothing, that's where I could hear them best. Perhaps a distant sound, at first confusing them for voices, perhaps a desperate attempt to find company. However, sooner rather than later, I discovered their nature. They were the same flapping of birds, presenting themselves almost every time I closed my eyes, their intensity decreasing or increasing in an unpredictable pattern with each night. When this stage of my life, so to speak, arrives, there's simply nothing more to do than let it pass. I must admit that, although over time, I happily accepted what was going to happen, sometimes I nostalgically remember those times when I was ignorant of my fate. Everything changed there. That simple talk with the doctor ended everything. The rent to pay, a marriage, children that was anything but favorable and didn't want to see me, a dubious pension. Everything lost its meaning there, and with the few years that passed from that point, everything went downhill. They say that dementia gradually erases things in your mind, but it wasn't as fast as the physical world when my family decided to put me in this house of evil. They didn't understand the blessing that had come into my life. They didn't support me, and simply left me here abandoned with people like me. People whose last years of life were slipping away, and they still had the audacity to tell me that it was the only option left, that they could have sent me to a worse place. Anyway, I ended up here from the city where I lived, far from everyone I knew. It could even be said that it was a place abandoned by God, but fortunately, that last part was not entirely true. My savior, the Lord who has accompanied me all my life, keeping my faith high, my life full under his word. He exists. To me, he's real. I spent some good years of my youth studying religion, the basics that the Bible teaches you, or even any god from a religion other than Christianity. However, it all ended in him. I know because I had seen him. I remember well. Despite all the years that have passed, I know 11 weeks in a coma after a car accident in my childhood confirmed it for me. The same sound of flapping, but at that time, I could feel his presence. I find no better words to describe it as something warm, comforting, as if to finally rest after a hard day's work. That torment. He was the one who calmed all of that torment until I could wake up once more. My family was Catholic. They taught us the word of the Lord, but they never came close to what I could feel. He was everywhere. He was everything. And at the same time, he was nothing. He always followed me, and I knew he would always guide me. He took me out of death when I was a child, from that dark hell, so the rest he would give me when I must go will be the right one. I had to keep living for a reason. It made perfect sense. All the mentions of this earthly life will be erased, so I can leave in peace. Not deleted exactly, but forgotten. It was wonderful. It was a thought that lingered in my most recondite being, no matter how worried I found myself when I was given the diagnosis. Another crack of thunder struck the entire place, pulling me out of my thoughts, which turned into dreams sooner than I expected. This time, I believe it was night. It seemed to still be raining. I wouldn't mind spending a bit more time here. I found it hard to turn myself from this chair, but I made sure to look at the entire room. It was really dark, and even gave me a slight uncomfortable feeling, strange for someone of my age who has lived through everything. I turned back to the window, hoping to become unconscious from sleep, or simply the laziness of existing here. My head was spinning. Aside from our Lord, the only company I felt here was my little one, my younger brother who I've surely outlived by more than 10 years. I don't remember the specific date, naturally due to my condition, but that didn't bother us at all. He showed up after a long time for my diagnosis. Rather than being bothered by his tardiness, I was really happy to see him after I thought I could never be close to him again. He looked identical to how we were when we were young. Every time I saw him, it brightened this even deeper, miraculous sea. He was so important in my life that even though the Lord's gift was to forget this life, the memories with him did not suffer as much damage. I felt blessed because those times when we fooled around, went to school, and enjoyed our greatest entertainment, video games, all of it remained present in my old conscious. I didn't exactly remember what we were playing, but the sensation was still ingrained in me. About a high-speed video game, a swift character that always amused my brother. He was his favorite. Even many of his birthday parties were themed around that youthful character. I would love to remember those days more clearly. We really had a lot of fun. I guess it was one of the Lord's trials. If I had to forget him, let it be one of the last things. I felt a slight rumble behind me. It seemed to be the creaking of something I did not recognize. I ended up attributing the sound to this house being too deteriorated and beginning to crack. It really did not matter much to me. As long as it does not fall apart before I leave, everything will be fine. In my peripheral vision, a familiar face entered. I felt a small jolt where my heart almost stopped, because I had not heard the person who sat down in the chair next to me and apparently had a gift in hand. It was my little one. Surely he knew beforehand that I was going to tire him once more with the same stories of our childhood, movies, video games, and how he loved that blue character. However, this time, he anticipated me. What he had in his hands was a poster, which upon closer inspection was of that character from so many decades ago. The poster was faded and it was simply his caricature figure. It seemed to be something too old. I pondered while my little one put it on the wall. I couldn't help but to notice that he looked younger. Oh my god, he will live a long and healthy life while his older brother will depart soon. I felt joy for such a statement in my mind, and to have something in this dark and uninviting room, something that reminded me of this very special person who, when seen with that image taken literally from our childhoods, seemed to look like the little boy who brought so much joy to me. Alongside this poster, he left a photo of both of us, this time not so young that I barely managed to recognize who we were. After those gifts and presents, he left, leaving me once more. But this time, I didn't feel this room as a miraculous prison, but rather something more comfortable, having the face of my little brother and a memory of our childhood, truly a deep connection for both of us. Without much time passing, I fell asleep once more. Honestly, I didn't want to know the passage of time, as I noticed that I frequently forgot the date, so I asked that all the clocks be removed from the room. I didn't want to know anything about this world when I discovered that I would soon depart to the kingdom of God, so I simply existed here. I was bathed 2 times a day, but my naps were so long that at times I believe I was cleaned without being awakened. For with each study of the progress of my condition, I began to notice that much more time had passed than I realized. The last day they did a study, it said that 4 years had passed? I'm not really sure now. For every time my mind wanders, it does so much that the thoughts I try to collect become my reality, and I enter into sleep. I see my little one. Finally, a dream that was not complete darkness. He was playing that video game happily while I waited for my turn, when that bunch of pixels that made us happy loses a life. It was the moment when I took control. I was not really good at it, but it was all worth it for the time we spent there. We were just 2 kids, enjoying our favorite game. Nothing else mattered in the world. When playing with him, I see that poster he left in my room of that old house. A bit of confusion echoes until I remember it completely. Of course, it was the old poster we had in our room. How could I have forgotten something like that? The poster was a bit faded, surely because of the time he gave it to me. Decades had already passed. Suddenly, in that house of our childhood, in that dream, someone knocks on the door, and I decide to open it, asking aloud who it could be. My brother, opening his mouth, responds to my pondering. It's me. I'm a bit taken back. Silly, it can't be you if you're right here. I hurry to the door and standing right in front of it. My body feels heavy. My head spins. The door was a different color. I had arrived here unconsciously because I remembered where every element of my old house was. But suddenly, I recognize nothing but this place. I hear my little one still playing the console, which reminds me that it was my little house. But I only hear him. I don't know how to get to him. What is this place? What are we doing playing here so calmly? This is not our house. The sound of flapping wings was present once more, and I remembered my faith. As much as I knew I was protected by the Lord, every inch of my body wanted to run away and take my little one from this unknown place. I wake up with difficulty, with cold sweat. I cannot describe the sensation of being in this unknown place with my little one. Have I forgotten? I start to question the miracle my Lord gave me. Is this what it feels like to forget such a precious memory? No, it cannot be. I have to feel the Lord. He is here. I feel his presence. I am going to be okay. Surely it was a strange dream with both of us playing. Maybe a friend's house. Yes, that must be it. I got lost because I did not know that house of his friend from elementary school. This time, the sky was blue and bright, with only a large white mass in the middle, as if it wanted to block the most beautiful view of the sky, like a little prank on the weather. However, it was a good day, as the gentleman helped me calm those thoughts with his love, reminding me that everything will be alright. I heard the door close behind me. The lady who worked in this old house had finished cleaning up after me. I hadn't noticed due to my age-related worries. I looked at the photo of me with my younger brother and couldn't help but to notice the dust on it. Had it been a week? Unable to grasp the idea, I turned to the poster of our favorite video game, which was a bit more faded and also slightly dusty. I was curious why my little one's gifts didn't last long, but I didn't dwell on it, as their presence still reminded me of such beautiful memories. I woke up from the dream startled, to more drops in the window. When had I fallen asleep? My worry escalated a bit as I almost forgot where I was. Yes, this devilish shack. I was indignant to see that my mind had declined a bit more, probably because the weather is so stormy that one loses track of time. I decided to lie back down on the bed with a bit of difficulty, walked past my little one's gifts, and lay down to continue sleeping, as there really isn't much to do here besides eat and sleep. Once again, I was with my brother in the same abandoned place, playing video games. I heard that sometimes the mind associates memories in places even if it's impossible for them to occur, so I simply let myself go. This time, we were playing a fighting game featuring our favorite character. I was particularly better at these than platform games, so, like old times, sometimes I'd let him win, and other times I crushed him to even the score. I felt alive. I should have cherished those memories more at that time. As we fought in the virtual world, I decided to land the final blow, and as the polygons of my brother's character fell in the ring, I celebrated my victory. I did it! right in his face. I turned to see my little one, only to find a disheartened face, a bit sad about his loss. Sometimes he took losses badly, so I would always get him food to console him. I calmed him, but he gave me a look that I had forgotten. Even though they were just video games, seeing my brother sad hurt me. I didn't want to see him like that. However, he stayed that way for a longer time, and that little face gradually made me pale. I started to hear my heart racing. I wanted to move, to say something. I woke up before I could give him his favorite chocolate, feeling powerless and frustrated because this time I was woken up for one of those tests to see how my mind was doing. I didn't want to wake up just to be told I was getting worse. However, as the minutes passed, the warmth of my Lord would come. It's true. I had forgotten that this brought me closer to him. I was so absorbed in my brother that I didn't notice the warmth the Lord has given me since I've been here. I was thankful and continued with the test. As the doctor, particularly new, was examining me, I couldn't help but look at my little brother's gifts. The photo was dusted off half-heartedly, and the poster remained faded. I felt satisfied, but noticed a strange detail. The eyes. I don't know exactly how to express it, but the eyes in the photo and on the poster, it seemed like they were staring at me with a relaxed expression and a narrow smile. His eyes had a look of pity in that photo. Were we really taken when we were apathetic? Was it the angle that made it seem like it was looking at me? I don't quite remember that day. I'm not sure about my own thoughts. I started to worry once more until the voice of the new doctor snapped me out of my thoughts. He was telling me to notify my relatives of my progress. Hesitantly, he showed me his written analysis and notes, and I looked closely. Hallucinations? So soon? I thought this would happen when I had a little time left to live due to my dementia, until when he was talking about it, I noticed the date on his notes. 7 years? 7 years have passed. I asked him to confirm the date, and it was true. I was disheartened. So much so that I didn't notice when he left the room. I went to sleep, hoping this would be forgotten too. I was in a strange house, not knowing I had been here before, but I was certain I was waiting for someone. Perhaps my little brother? I waited a bit on the old sofa that felt familiar my whole life. Looked out the window onto the street, and there was simply nothing. But a detail snapped me out of my boredom. I was paralyzed to see my brother walking away from the door. I wanted to call him or shout, but I didn't want to turn around to go to the door because I simply didn't know where to go. I felt as I leaned on the window. The farther he walked away, the more stuck I felt here, as if something was grabbing me, holding me here. I looked down to catch my breath, only to become even more terrified when I saw a hand coming out of the wall, grabbing my clothes, my arms, my legs. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe, nor speak. I felt like I was going to faint. I was running out of air. Everything became blurry until everything went white. I felt as if I was being abandoned, as all my relatives had. Was I still passed out? I felt as if I was floating. It seemed to last too long. Are my reoccurring dreams this long? Yes, the scare had made me forget this detail. Amidst my thoughts, I could feel something. Not physically, but I sensed something in the distance. It was that look again, appearing in the distance in front of me. A single eye in this white void was enough to provoke a sense of guilt in me for having brought tears to my little brother. I didn't like it. I hated the idea of staying here for a long time. I wanted to move, to wake up, but this time I couldn't. Those tears that my brother had now caused mine. I heard the flapping again, those wings. I could imagine as if they were birds trapped in a cage, becoming more desperate to escape. The sound grew stronger as that gaze settled on my face with more and more pity. It seemed not to be sad about making him cry, but as if looking at something as delicate or as sad as an injured animal. This time, I wake up on the floor, seemingly have fallen without anyone noticing. The cold touch of the floor emphasizes that it's past midnight. I rise with difficulty, momentarily forgetting how to coordinate my body's movements. I'm unsure whether to attribute this to my recent sedentary lifestyle or the condition that has plagued me, or perhaps the mix of both. My gaze fixes on the dark room, my mind spinning, vision blurry while the dizziness and the sugar drop from the effort began to fade. How do healthier people manage to do so much without forgetting or tiring? It irritates me, but I understand it's a price to pay for a long life. And fortunately, I was chosen by something greater than all. I noticed the blue poster of my little brother. It had become dustier and its color more faded. The endless drops, the rain. Yes, must have been warping the wall. This place will indeed fall apart one day, I think to myself. It didn't seem so blue anymore, looking ever more lifeless. Yet the gaze remains there in the eyes of the animated character. I prefer not to look for an explanation anymore. Are gazes inherently like that? I can't remember what a different gaze looks like. I've lost myself in my thoughts too much. I wanted to walk to the window to see those drops, which in my imagination could be anything but those judgmental eyes. But halfway there, my legs refused to cooperate. I couldn't move. Not because they stopped working, but because I couldn't remember the pattern. One foot, then the other? I can't recall. It seems like my leg muscles have also lost their memory. I decide to let myself fall into the bed, luckily next to me. Since that day, I haven't been able to get up. If before it was hard to perceive time, now it's much harder. The most exciting parts of the day were when I was cleaned or when I ate, as that was more entertaining than thinking. Increasingly, I had less to remember. Dreams with that gaze became recurrent. Sometimes it appeared, other times it was just flutters. It was rare to dream about my brother. Once, I nearly forgot to associate that gaze with him. I feel my sanity finally giving way. I can't distinguish things well anymore. If before I had notion of how things were, now it's as if it's there but can't see it. Those very fortuitous dreams, increasingly distant, were about spending time together with that video game. I didn't even recognize the character's face anymore. And worse, I was about to forget my little brother's face, who kept his expressions of sadness. I began to await the next examination, which, although it felt distant, would surely come much sooner than I anticipated. Sadly, my mind would forget it, and I'd be left waiting for something I couldn't remember what it was. Everything became monotonous, but there was something that still hurt. Something that began to haunt me like an angry god. From this bed, I couldn't see that old photo and could only glimpse the poster, now with parts so faded they were almost gray, even white. I was so afraid that when that character completely disappeared, I'd lose the only thing connecting me to my little one. My little one, I doubted for a second. Was it a small person close to me? Probably a child? I only felt a huge affection for them, even in my lamentable state. One day I dreamed. No, I can't say if I dreamed or saw it, but I saw someone sitting on my bed, looking at me. There was a warm sensation in their presence. I knew I recognized them, but there was an increasing discomfort because I didn't know who they were. I couldn't make out the shape of their face. God, I couldn't even distinguish their size. They just sat there, looking at me for hours, as if seeing a terminally ill family member. Was I furious with myself for letting something like this slip away? All I had left were my little memories, and the man who, finally, I perceived more in my dreams. The only place that took me out of these infernal four walls, so I attributed it. What else could it be? Those flutters I heard in my coma, and now here had to be him. I couldn't conceive of anything else. At first, I must admit I was scared. I wanted to run away, but in his gaze, I found every possible emotion. It had to be him. It was the same feeling that accompanied me all of my life. The one that was there when I felt sadness because my closest beings doubted me. Doubted him. They didn't have as strong as faith as mine. Clear certainty like existence. I woke up once more. The same wall, the same bed, on the large table to my right. The memory of my loved one. Someone very important to me. It hurt to know they'd never return, but I don't remember. My being feels a great connection with that old poster. I don't even know what's depicted there, but I sense the same gaze I see in my dream. Sometimes the seated person changed position, and so to speak, essence, because I felt someone different. Someone angry? Someone who wanted to hurt me. Someone who judged me. They stood by the door, next to the window, and other times in front of my bed. I knew they wouldn't do anything to me. I took refuge in my dreams, and the man gave me so much warmth, making me feel so safe that when I wake up, I wouldn't suffer. I had the certainty, and with it, I faced those times when I felt even the walls were watching me. Or at least that was until I forgot the purpose of defending myself here. I began to forget why I came to this place. I know I have to be here. I know all these endless and yet so fleeting days are for something. For him. Everything I do is for him. And surely he'll be waiting for me. when he finally comes to pick me up. One day, I was bewildered by a visit that seemed to recur every few naps. 7 what? That's what the visitor said to me when they left. I truly can't remember who or what they were here for. They just stopped by to speak about things I didn't quite understand. I'm a bit scared. I can hardly articulate words. I can only cling to my faith, my gift, my mind, for as long as my body will allow, as it gradually began to feel like a prison. Everything worsened when I started dreaming about this place, always here. A dark room with shadows, or perhaps people, watching and observing like scavengers, waiting for their prey to finally appear, different from when I dream of the reason for my faith, in total whiteness. Was this what awaited me? Maybe when I sleep forever, I'll end up there, but first, I had to go through this place, this mundane hell. I awoke over and over again. Each time I believed I was finally awake, I'd open my eyes once more, where I simply existed. To keep sleeping, waiting, and getting used to this environment, I could no longer distinguish reality from reality itself. Gradually, this place became darker. In one of my vague thoughts, this dark place where I felt judged, blamed, with eyes full of sadness and hatred. Odd. I remembered the familiarity of the setting. I felt like the world was falling apart when I found myself in the same place where the Lord found me. A product of a coma I remembered from my childhood. My Lord, why am I here more and more? Why aren't you here? Why does it seem like you won't save me this time? These horrible walls are looking at me, trying to reach me. I swear somehow I know that if I get up, they'll throw me back into this bed. I cried. Tears steamed from my eyes until I fell asleep. This time without dreaming, as if I plunged into that dreadful vegetative state. Someone entered after so long. Someone was doing something other than rubbing damp cloth on me. No, I couldn't understand what they were saying, but it was nice to have someone take me out of my thoughts. I felt like I was probably being betrayed. Maybe I needed clarity. Without much time passing, the feeling that it was probably a dream kept me uneasy, but I didn't care anymore. I wanted to surrender to whatever was happening, but that subtle and fleeting sensation of calm disappeared suddenly. While this individual talked to me and looked at me, they stayed there, staring with their eyes fixated on me, which started to make me uncomfortable because their weary and tired eyes began to resemble those of my faith. But they seemed angry. I felt a chill. Yes, he was very angry. Had I done something to anger him? I turned to my distorted image on the wall, which had survived all this time in its place, but it also had this look. Why was everyone angry with me? Too much time had passed like this, and I still didn't understand it. The individual left, but I felt that pressure on me, not knowing what to do. This gloomy room was finally of a sunny day, but I didn't feel at ease. It was too bright, so bright that the contrast provided by the angry look and contrasted more when the room became brighter and brighter. My faith, he, the Lord, was judging me. I couldn't feel his warmth anymore. I wanted to scream as loud as I never had, and run away from here, but I didn't know how to do it. I tried, and finally, I was able to slowly stand up. With much effort, I don't know of what, but I was scared. I looked towards the sheet of the wall. It was unrecognizable, but there was something there. I think it was nothing more than an old memory, something that reminded me of my sweet childhood. It was important to me, but despite that, it looked at me with disdain. How could something that made me so happy look at me like that? I was absorbed in it until my head started to spin. My stomach began to churn, and a sensation as if needles were running down my back manifested the moment I noticed something started to move inside there. Something wanted to come out. The gaze that had so tormented me had cleared. Blood started to trickle from beneath that sheet of the wall. Now, yes, I felt as all the fury I perceived in this room had intensified. They would return me to the bed, back to my lethargy. That eye began to bleed more and more until I saw an unrecognizable mass peeking from inside the paper. It had an impossible shape, a huge head. If it was its head, it seemed to be burning, as if parts of that white mass were detaching from its being. Its expression was indifferent, but definitely wanted to get out of there. Was it my lord? Did he want to take me with him? I confirmed it when wings came out of the wall, and glimpses of white, gold, and red together surrounded it in its unrecognizable form. The flesh around that enormous eye exposed. The color of the blood was something as new as it was nostalgic. Horror enveloped me as the Lord approached me more and more. It was a lost battle. I felt I was going to faint until after yielding to my fate, I woke up. I opened my eyes with difficulty, scared, but I don't remember why. Maybe it had been a nightmare? I knew I wasn't dreaming when I felt so clearly. The sheets of my bed, they were clean, contrasting with my cold sweat, but I felt comfortable. I felt like a great weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I turned my gaze to the old poster, that video game character. I still couldn't remember his name, but it was him. He had returned to my memory. It took me a few moments to regain that it was a memory of my little one, my brother. I began to remember more and more important little details. I tried to stand up, and although it was a bit difficult at the start, I think I managed. I could articulate a few phrases, all of them thankful towards the great reason for my faith, the Lord. He was right. I was right. Dementia would purify this old mind to make room for paradise. I hesitated for a second, wondering if this would be the place where I would seal the end of my life. But upon noticing my aged body, I knew that this place where I would be collected would be nothing more than this old little house. The same doctor who had treated me for the last 11 years entered the room, much older now, but he did not show that initial surprise upon seeing me. And above all, being able to hold a conversation with me for today's examination was a regression of my condition, or so I fervently believed. The doctor's surprise gradually faded away. His expression turned serious. It was something he couldn't believe. How he remained so calm in the face of a true miracle. After conducting the studies, he bid farewell, and he mentioned he was glad to talk to me on this fine day. I was sitting on my bed when he took today's studies, but I wanted to test my luck to see if I could sit in that old chair. After so many years, with a little difficulty due to my old age, but with all the energy I had left, I looked out the window, seated in the chair that I never thought would bring me so much joy. It was a completely cloudy day. Too bright, something that didn't bother me. I spent the next few hours simply watching the sky, being fed, being cleaned, and watching the day go by with a different perspective from the endless nights where rain and thunder were all there was. And my mind felt light. I almost forgot everything that had plagued me these years. I simply lived each moment of this cloudy day. I finally felt sleep. The fact that I could feel rest as something I could experience with a clear conscience felt wonderful to me. I remembered my brother, my little one. They'll surely give him the great news. I started to reminisce about those evenings. Such sweet evenings when we played that video game, despite having a totally worn out and almost unrecognizable poster, and with the dusty photo. I was happy. I remembered our growth, leaving our school, university, but something was missing. It was difficult for me to remember what happened next. I made a little more effort. Without realizing it, I fell asleep once again. The slight feeling of lack fading away once more. I am again in the white infinity, but something doesn't fit at all. That thing is here, the Lord, but in this small and unrecognizable white mask. His eye looks at me expressionless. I should be happy, but it makes me uncomfortable. But at the same time, I finally remember that once sad look. It was my brother's when I beat him in that video game. No, I was paralyzed. The huge load of memories made me realize many that I had overlooked. That look, it wasn't exactly when he cried. I had it more times than I remembered. He was never fond of God like I was, and always felt disdain when I ignored him to focus on my religious studies, to follow his rules. He was little, and he needed a brother. He was there when my parents kicked me out of the house, when I was arrested for assault, when I got married and he discovered how I mistreated my wife and my first child, and the same as his lifeless body lying in the living room of my old house, an expression of pity and disapproval, disappointment, an expression of pain, as if he had died crying. The image came to mind along with his purple neck, suffocated, without a grain of air running through it. He was so fragile. Terminal lucidity is the last phase of dementia before death. It usually happens in a few cases where the patient remembers large portions of their forgotten life, sadly to die hours later, like a cruel joke from our creator. I had fallen asleep, and he was here. An enormous sense of remorse invaded me, while that thing looked at me began to grow. Its wings had become larger, while an extra pair of them came out of its exposed chest, which had been left without limbs. It was a mess splattered with red. That look that had tormented me so much simply fell. Literally, its eye dissolved, leaving an incessant glow. I would have vomited if it weren't for feeling familiarity that I never thought I would see here. Those flaps. I recognized them. This head was surrounded by his golden fingers, forming a kind of halo, an unrecognizable mass of memories from my childhood, my brother, and him. My whole life was here. He was everything. He was everything and nothing at the same time. The reason for my devotion and my torment, my judge and my accomplice. He was in all places and was all people at once. He, even before all things were even something. He simply is. I felt the enormous guilt that had been haunting me all these years. I regret very much the evils I have caused in this earthly place. I began to worry to the point that anxiety began to consume me, slowly but vigorously. However, a thought that had crossed my mind pulled me out of perdition. God, my Lord, you saw how I have suffered all this time. This has been my punishment. I was descended to hell to be reborn once again, right? Oh Lord, you have absolved me of all evil. This hope left me with a slightly lighter burden. I looked at God who, with his height surpassing mine, resembled the silhouette of a priest, with those large wings like his attire. It was only God, me, and my little shadow. I wouldn't have noticed it if it weren't for one detail. My Lord approached me slowly, and when one of his wings stepped on my shadow, I felt a small pressure of my chest. It weighed as if I were given a huge bear hug, and it had started to be more severe as more of his body filled my shadow. My burdens weighed me down. I wanted to run away, but it was too late. I bowed my head. At the same moment that I felt in all my dreams, I began to forget everything once again. Everything. Everything except that look. The one my brother gave me when he confronted me about the existence of the being that was lying in front of me. After begging to get his older brother back, who exclaimed that religion had taken him away, I felt that disappointment in him. And I also remember the enormous anger it provoked in me. It was the last thing I felt, along with the terrible regret when everything started to fade away. This place, a white void. Even nothingness was fading away. It was no different from the dark pit of despair that plagued me when I was in a coma. In the last years, the moment I reached this conclusion was when the environment cracked. Once again here, my God was floating in this personal hell. He controlled this place, no more. I came here on my own. It couldn't be. I exclaimed in my mind for forgiveness. I wanted to get out of here. However, all hope was lost. I forgot how to articulate my words. I forgot how to move every part of my body. Finally, as if in a cruel offense to this entity, whom I called my creator, because he would know what would happen next, I gathered all of my will before forgetting how to breathe, and exclaimed with a weak voice, God, forgive me, for I have sinned. And that's the story of the one who always was. This story is genuinely good and explores a very scary topic. The thought of losing sight of something, knowing that it's there, that it has meaning, but you don't know what it is. Then to seek that clarity and the thing you always found comforting, only to find out that it's not what you wanted. It's because of religion the protagonist hurt his loved ones. He put too much into it, sacrificed so much. And when he is met with the face of God, he remembered all of his wrongdoings that he did. I also think it's a really unique take as a side thing. Sonic.exe has sort of been tied to religion ever since the I am God stuff, though that was more so to mock religion, but in this story it has a much different effect. The protagonist has to come to terms with death, remorse, and the forgetting of basic functions. Life becomes a dream he drifted in and out of. This has become one of my favorite Sonic pastas. Absolutely amazing work. And it's really interesting to know that his original story was completely different. So what was his old story? The old lore wasn't discarded entirely, as that story now fits in the myths of Yamaha FNF mod. This previous version of the character is named Hyper Accurate. He keeps the same tones of religion, but in a much different way. In an alternate reality of the events of Sonic Mania, the Phantom Ruby, when sending Sonic to different places, somehow teleported him to Hidden Palace. The Super Emeralds were active for some reason, but something was different. The palace itself was strange. On the walls were prophecies, with a being of immeasurable power with an aspect that Sonic didn't recognize. Sonic had already collected some normal emeralds, and although the super emeralds gave him a bad feeling, he decided to use them for the final battle. Sonic, in his strange new hyper form, defeated Eggman and the Heavy King, taking the Phantom Ruby. Normally, the emeralds would destabilize the ruby, creating a portal to another dimension. But here, something changed. Sonic, without changing back to base, emitted an energy too powerful for the ruby to withstand, and when he got close, a reality shift occurred so serious that it merged their universe with another, too unique. The White Hedgehog tried to contain the union of these two worlds, but only caused him to expose himself too much to the unknown world, leaving him unrecognizable and fusing with the ruby, making him immortal. This new winged hedgehog lost his temper for the time, using the ruby to deform everyone with an explosion of illusionary energy, including Eggman and the Heavy King. Frightened, he left and flew out in a hurry. Now he is much more temperamental, although he wants to contain himself. The original story isn't bad, but I do much prefer the story of I Am. The FNF song titled Made in Heaven isn't out, but we do have screenshots of what he's going to look like. Additionally, there is an interesting tidbit for who he's singing with. This is Sekwi, created by Groovester, and some concepts and designs made by Sirius. He's a version of Knuckles the Echidna from I Am's world, who's committed numerous sacrifices under the promise of protecting his world and being let into paradise. Upon I Am ascending to godhood, Sekwi was left behind. He destroyed the Master Emerald in a fit of rage, causing him to become banished to the ocean depths. He would go on to be referred to as Bahima, remaining chained by the souls of his victims and desperately trying to reach a paradise that he is unworthy of joining. So to my understanding, he helped create the old hyper-accurate. Honestly, I really like this dynamic between the two, although I do think that the lore is a little altered for the FNF mod, but is essentially the same to my understanding, though they do share similarities between his old lore and his new lore. Both the stories aren't bad. Honestly, I really enjoyed reading it. I do think that this was translated because the original one is in Spanish. So for any Spanish speakers out there who would prefer that, I will have it linked down below. And I'll also have the English translation that I read along with the creator's stuff. I really hope that you guys enjoyed today's video. Be sure to subscribe, use code Dunkachi to get 10% off your cheeky order. And remember, stay spooky.